Hi there. Thanks for joining us again for another one of our teaching tips for working with English learners. Glad to have you here today. Today we're going to talk about grading. It's one of the questions we get asked most often when working with teachers. How do we grade students? What is fair? What is reasonable? What's unreasonable? And what do we do when our gut feeling doesn't match our curriculum? We're going to talk about that. Before we get into it too much, let me put this caveat. Whatever you do has to align with your district regulations and policies. So first check those out. What guidance are you given there? I would say in most districts there's very little clarity when it comes to grading English learners in the policy and guidelines. But check there first and ask around a little bit, because I never want to guide you in a direction that would cause friction in your job. Taking policy and guidelines out of the picture, let's just talk about reality. Tradition versus reality. So when you're thinking about a high school English class, what does the standard say? What standard are you required to teach? Does the standard say you need to read Macbeth and write an essay? Or does the standard say you need to read grade level appropriate literature and find the conflict and cite evidence? Yeah, food for thought. I know we're supposed to implement our curriculum. So when it comes to English language arts and classes like that, some things that you can do for modifications would be use graphic novels, use cliff notes, use modified versions of the text, use just excerpts. When you are reading Macbeth, is the expectation that you read everything, or that you can read the crucial pieces that will lead you to learn the standard? Some things I want you to think about in your planning. Let's look at it from a science perspective. Does a student need to create a full-blown lab report, or really just hone in on those pieces that show you that the student understands the process, the procedures, and the outcomes of whatever happened and can explain that back to you? A lab report is an important piece of information, but developmentally, our lower proficiency level students might not be there yet. They could still show you what they know without producing that full-blown lab report. It's more being flexible in the teacher mind to start accepting different types of evidence of learning than it is about grading what you're used to assigning. A lot to think about there. So here we go. Do we really need an essay? Do we really need a full report? What is true evidence of the standard for a proficiency level 1 student, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and up through a native speaker? When we look at our standards and we start planning, that's a great place to start. How will each student show me evidence of achieving the standard? And I want to introduce you to a couple tools that can help you with that if you're new to English learners. Step 1, know the proficiency levels and what they mean. Look for your students' data. Ask your ESL teacher, your English language development teacher, if you don't know where they are or what they are. Ask them to give you your students' English proficiency levels. Ask for the breakdown by domain: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You should get a score for each of those and an overall score. So you're asking for 5 English proficiency level scores. Those scores are going to tell you the comfort zone of your students in English. And it's very important to know all 4 domains, because your expectations need to shift if you're accepting an oral response versus a written response. Or if you're expecting a student to read a passage and a written response. All of those proficiency levels are a little bit different, and you'll need to know where your students are. First thing, know where your students are. Step 2, know what those proficiency levels mean so that you can adjust accordingly. A great tool for that would be the WIDA Can-Do descriptors. Right here, I'll show you an example from grade 6 through 8. As you can see on the WIDA Can-Do descriptors, it breaks it down into proficiency levels, and it breaks it down into that listening, speaking, reading, and writing domain. This way, you can look up your student. If a student is a level 3 in writing, look at that level 3 box and you'll see what your student should be able to do, and that will help you think of how to assess your student. Download the Can-Do chart from the WIDA website address right here, and look at your grade level and see what your students are expected to do. Next step. How do we challenge ourselves to think differently about assessment and about grading? How can a P1, proficiency level 1 English speaker, show you what they know about a text, about a science process, about a concept in history? All of these things are extremely important to communicate, but what does it look like for a proficiency level 1? Let's take a look at that Can-Do chart again. Again, this is grade 6 through 8, but you can find the one that matches your grade level. What does it say a level 1 can do? I'm going to look at writing. Under writing, when I'm creating an assessment, it says a level 1 can draw content-related pictures, produce high-frequency words, label pictures and graphs, create vocabulary concept cards, generate lists from pre-taught words or word banks. So when I'm thinking of assessment and grading my proficiency level 1 student, could they draw something to show me that they understand? Could I provide some type of image that they then label with appropriate vocabulary? Can I provide a word bank and some sentence frames and they can give me a basic structure of what they learned or understand from this standard? Use the Can-Do descriptors and the items in them to help you think about what each student can do to show you that standard. The most important thing, hands down to me, is that you not change your expectation for the level of thinking. All students should be working toward that grade level standard. So if it says justify, we all need to justify. If it says cite evidence, we all need to cite evidence. What that looks like and how we do it can change. Key things to remember. Take a look at the documents, think through some examples, and see what you think when it comes to assessing and grading students in different content areas at different proficiency levels. If you get stuck or you need a brainstorm, reach out to us at English Learner Portal. We'll be happy to brainstorm with you. Here's our email. Send us a note, let us know what you're working on, and we'll help you think of some ideas. Thank you for taking the time to consider what we can do to be more fair in our grading and our practices for assessment with our English learners. See you again soon.